This is the show dedicated to raising up the next generation of men of faith and character. My name is Mark Stanifer. Welcome to The Next Men Up.
Part of the NRT Podcast Network.
Well, hey guys, welcome back once again to The Next Men Up podcast and the show that is changing the world along with you, because you guys are part of the community that's raising up the next generation of healthy and godly men. And when we do that, everyone benefits. You know this, my name is Mark, and you know this, my sidekick is Josh.
Hello, hello.
Good to have you back, buddy.
Always good to be here.
So before we get into today's topic, just one more reminder. Our Forging Men course launches today, April 2nd. So if you're hearing this episode today, there's still time to get yourself signed up to join this group of dads that are learning how to create an initiation process for their boys. If it's after April 2nd and you're listening to this, you can still get out to our website, thenextmenup.com/forgingmen, and check out the course. Chances are we've still got a spot available for you too. Even if it's a few days later, you want to jump in, check us out, thenextmenup.com/forgingmen. Get all the information you need. Get yourself signed up to create this process, this bigger vision to usher and guide your boy from being a boy into being a man in an intentional and purposeful way. We'd love to have you as part of this group, so get yourself signed up. Okay. So I came across something not too long ago on Facebook, which I have a hate-tolerate relationship with Facebook.
That's well put.
I'm sure I'm not the only one, but it occasionally provides some inspiration or some ideas. Mm-hmm. And one of my Facebook friends posted something that I asked him if it was his, and it wasn't original to him. So I don't know the original author.
Okay.
But I got it from him, and it was titled 32 Things or Rules to Teach Your Son. And I'm like,
I think I came across this as well.
I'm interested.
Yeah.
What do they have to say?
Mm-hmm.
And so, listeners, we won't recite all 32 rules. We'll put it in the expanded show notes. But I thought it might be fun to just highlight a couple of these that stood out to us as we were going through this list. And boy, there's some really, really good things, some good ideas on this list. And so let's pick a few. So as you looked through this list, what stood out to you?
Well, I think for me, 23 kind of hit home. And number 23 is, after writing an angry email, read it carefully, then delete it.
Interesting.
Now, back 10 years ago, I had this vendor whose hardware wasn't working properly. And I'd been through 3 months of back and forth stuff with them trying to get it resolved. And for me, it was a fairly expensive piece of gear. I think we dropped like $40,000 on it or something, and it wasn't working properly.
That's not nothing.
It's not nothing. And it was a big, high visibility thing that I was working on. And I wrote this, I don't know, 1,000-word, like, ridiculous email trying to get this thing resolved. And
those aren't called emails; those are called books.
Yeah, I know. It was way too long.
Okay,
and,
keep going.
And so before I sent it, I went and talked with a colleague of mine who had a little bit more corporate political understanding than I did at the time. And we went through it, and he was like, well, you might not want to send this. You might want to rethink about how you're approaching this situation. And I went back, and I thought about it overnight. I went back in the next day, deleted it, sent 3 lines of like, hey, can we please get this thing fixed? Otherwise, we're going to have to return it kind of thing. And we ended up getting it resolved. And I think it ended up working for us for, I think, 5 or 6 years. For a technology project, that's a long time in production. Mm-hmm. Ended up getting resolved well. But I'm glad I deleted that first 1,000-word like novel of an email. Just don't send angry emails. It doesn't work out well for anyone involved.
It doesn't. And we've all read them. you know?
Yeah.
And maybe some of us are like, yeah, right on, stick it to the man. But often I'm reading them and I'm shaking my head like, oh no, this is not going to make the situation better. It's not going to accomplish what you want to accomplish. It would have been
Nope.
better to just let this one go. I've heard the 24-hour rule before, where you write it,
Yeah.
set it aside, come back. This one, here's what I hear in this: get it out.
Yes.
Use the email or the letter as a release to just let that tension and that frustration, anger go. But keep it to yourself. Just delete it.
Yeah, and do not, if you're going to write an angry email, don't write it in your email software. Write it in a text editor of some sort, so that you never can accidentally send it.
Yeah, that's probably good wisdom right there.
Then delete it. If you're going to keep it around, keep it as like a reminder of how much of an idiot you were when you were writing it.
Yes. So, number 23, after writing an angry email, read it carefully and then delete it.
Yes.
Here's one that stood out to me, and I haven't always been good at this in my own life, but maybe better than I give myself credit for. And it's something that I've encouraged my kids as a dad, like intentionally. I didn't quite say it this way, but something that I was encouraging my kids. It's 22 on this list. It's eat lunch with the new kid.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We've all been the new kid. In fact, it is to this day, I'm 48, to this day, I will go into a new situation in a room of people that I don't know, and instantly I'm back in middle school with my tray, leaving the counter where I got the food, and I'm turning to the room where the tables are, and I'm like, where am I going to sit? And this is largely how I am wired. Okay. Although I don't think I'm the only one. It has a lot to do with how my personality wired. But I've been that new kid. And I know that it's helpful when somebody reaches out. And so this one stood out to me because it's something that I've tried to encourage my kids to do. Recognize the quote unquote new kid and include them, invite them in, go out of your way to make them feel welcome. It matters.
Yeah, and those new kids are probably more interesting than the old ones.
Well, that's a good point. We never quite know, right?
Until we go meet them.
That's right. Maybe we hold it. It's interesting, Josh. So when we get lost in our own anxiety or insecurity of what will it mean, what will they think if I go sit with the new kid, we lose sight of the fact of what gift or opportunity may arise as a result of initiating that relationship and that contact.
And if you're wrong, whatever. At least
That's
you had
right.
lunch with a new kid.
That's right. And you made an attempt.
Yes.
Right? You made an attempt.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah. So what else? What's another one that jumped out for you?
There's one that I agree with, but I think I would add a little bit to it.
Okay.
And that one is expect more from your heroes, or hold your heroes to a higher standard, I think is what it was.
Yeah, number 7.
Number 7.
Hold your heroes to a higher standard.
Yeah, hold your heroes to a higher standard. I think that's true. But I would also add, and don't put them on a pedestal.
So can you distinguish between higher standard but not on a pedestal? What do you think in there?
So if you're going to look up to someone, you want them to be living life in a way that's different from you or others around them. You want them to be living a life of virtue. You want them. The reason why you're looking to someone to be your hero, I guess, or someone to look up to is because they're doing something better than you're doing it. But just because they're doing something better or living life better than you are doesn't mean they have everything sorted out. And eventually they're going to fail. And if you put that hero or that mentor figure up on a pedestal, when they fail, then you run the risk of having everything that you've learned from them evaporate into thin air as well. You run the risk of disillusionment. So you have to have some balance in the way that you treat those that you respect, so that you don't expect perfection out of them. You just expect them to be better than you.
I like that, because even in the midst of non-perfection, and of course, perfection is a myth, right?
Right.
Or mistakes or failures or whatever, there can still be wisdom and character qualities that are worthy of aspiring to or following or
There's something to pull out of them. There's something to learn from them.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I think that's not to get too political on this, but I think that's something that we seem to have forgotten in our culture is if anyone makes a mistake, then we should just get rid of them and not pay attention to anything that they've done because their mistakes outweigh anything they could possibly have done that would have been admirable. So we look at ex-presidents and we decide that we're not going to like look at their lives to learn something. We just discard them because they weren't perfect or any other leader. You have to look at them as balanced people. Well, maybe balanced people is not necessarily the best way of putting it.
As human.
As human and as like they have great qualities and bad qualities and make an evaluation on their lives. But just because they have some bad qualities doesn't mean all the good stuff that they did was terrible. We shouldn't pay attention to it.
I feel like if we step through that door that you opened, we might not come back for an episode or two. And so maybe that becomes another topic that we can tee up because I think you're on to something there. But that could take us down. That could take us down an interesting path for sure.
It could. I don't think that's our list of. Was it 32?
No, it's
but
not.
Just that's the reason why I think I would add that a little bit. Don't put them on a pedestal.
Fair enough. Yeah. So there was one that I had a little bit of kind of scratch my head moment too. And it's number 15 on this list. It's be like a duck. Okay, so you got my attention. Remain calm on the surface and paddle like crazy underneath. And so my first thought is I get the image of a duck. But I'm not totally sure I understand what the author is trying to convey here. So maybe it would be good to guess at what the author of this is trying to convey, that you can be working and you can be striving and you can be moving with lots of energy and intent. Because the only reason why a duck would be paddling like crazy under the water is to get in a direction, right? Like if they're just floating on the pond or the water, they don't need to be paddling like crazy.
No, if they're paddling like crazy, they're probably moving against the current.
Or trying to get somewhere intentionally, or get out of the water, or
something.
Right, get to safety. But I think maybe what I read into this is that despite what is going on, be calm and be present in a way that doesn't create anxiety for those that are around you or undue excess energy or stress for those that are around you. I don't know. I'm kind of guessing here, and this is where it would benefit to be able to have the author and kind of pick his brain as to what he was getting at. But I don't know. This one was just one that jumped out to me like, I don't know. I don't get it.
That's really interesting because I actually relate with that one a lot.
Oh, you do? Okay, so do tell.
Stressful situations get amped up when you draw attention to the stressful situation. So you want things to look easier than they actually are. That's what professionals do. Professionals make hard things look easy.
They do. Oh, okay, keep going.
Okay, so like we see these amazing catches on the football field.
Yes.
That like should be impossible, and the player that makes the catch, the receiver that makes the catch, makes it look so easy.
That's right.
Like anybody can do it. And we actually we get annoyed when they don't do the impossible. Because it looks so easy. Because it looks so easy. What you don't see though is all of the work they did behind the scenes. All of the hundreds of repetitions they did for that one particular catch. There's one that I'm thinking of happened like 5 or 6 years ago. It was a college football game, I believe. And the quarterback and the receiver had practiced this particular pass in this particular location in the field, something like 500 times in the course of the year, just in case it happened. It was this corner catch, like at the back of the end zone kind of thing. Receiver made it, like play of the year, play of the century kind of thing. but no one pays attention to, all the other scenarios that they worked on.
Yeah.
Like, it was just that one perfect thing. And so that was the thing that got noticed. It was the calm on the surface with all the energy that was expended underneath it.
Interesting. Okay, so that I can wrap my head around. If the paddling like crazy means all of the work and the effort and the focus and the intention behind the scenes, that may look like you're an overnight success or that you did the impossible, but behind the scenes, you did the practice, you did the 10,000 hours, you put in the time to become the expert or whatever.
But you never draw attention to that.
Got it.
You only draw attention to the end result.
Okay, I got it.
That's the deal. Now, whether that's necessarily the best thing to do, because you may be misleading people, that's a different conversation. But
so maybe the asterisk that I would add to this one is like what I've heard coaches say before: when you score the touchdown, look like you've been there before.
Yes.
Or act like you've been there before.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
So any other jump out to you?
There was one more. Number 29. Remember, at times the rain must fall for us to appreciate the sun. Now, I heard this stated differently, which is you have to have the sucky bridge to get to the awesome chorus.
Okay, so a music reference there.
So music reference.
Okay.
Right? So
it transitions from one to another.
Yeah, so you can, like, songs are usually made up of like a verse, a chorus, and a verse, a chorus, and there's a bridge that kind of like brings the two of them together, right? It's like this interlude thing, and the bridge usually like repeats like the chorus or has some slightly different words. But oftentimes, the bridge is not nearly as good as the verse and the chorus. You forget the bridge because the bridge isn't the important bit. But the reason why the chorus is so awesome, why it soars above the rest of the song, is because in comparison to the bridge, it is so awesome. But if the bridge was awesome, then the chorus wouldn't sing.
Interesting.
You have to have the lulls in order for the peaks to really feel like peaks. If you're always living at a crescendo, then there's no variation, and there's no way of there's no terrain. It's just flat. It's like Ohio.
At least Central Ohio.
We're in Ohio. Yeah. If you go down to the southeast corner of Ohio, it's interesting, and there's mountains and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's cool. That's like the beginning of Appalachia, and it is interesting, and it's wonderful. And Hocking Hills is great, but Central Ohio is just flat, and the reason why it's so boring is there are no peaks and valleys, there are no highs and lows, and so everything is just bleh, including the weather often.
That there's the mountains calling to Mr. Josh here. Yeah. Well, so it's like light contrasts dark.
Exactly. If you just have a white canvas or a black canvas, there's nothing interesting about it.
Yeah. But
if you have that white canvas with a little splotch of orange, whoa, that's interesting and intriguing.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. So remember, at times the rain must fall to appreciate the sun. There's lots of different ways that you could have gone with that one, but what stood out to you is interesting. I like it. So there's one more on this list that I'll share. And again, listeners, we'll put the list out there. Curious your thoughts. But it's stand on principle. Mm-hmm. And it makes me think of a pastor, author, teacher that I encountered about 15 years ago. And I don't know if I've ever mentioned him on the show, but he just wrecked me. Like my first encounter with him, he just wrecked me in a good way. And so I've been kind of following him ever since, and just pretty influential in my spiritual journey. His name is Bruxy Cavey. But he talks about understanding, here's the language that he uses, understanding the principles behind the precepts. And so in my inclination, in my wiring, and some of my upbringing, I had a tendency toward rule following. Mm-hmm. And there was some safety in the rules. You know, if I follow the rule, I'm good. If I don't follow the rule, I'm not good. And there's a whole lot that we could unpack, and that would be telling my story, and we don't need to go all through that today, but there was some comfort and some safety in the rules. Mm-hmm. what Bruxy talks about, and I think maybe what the author of this list is talking about, is get to the underlying principle that supports the rules or supports the precepts, and then you get to a ground that's a little more firm, because it's the principle has a much broader application than an interpretation that gets converted into the rule. And in the context of much of Bruxy's teaching and language on this, it's Old Testament law versus New Testament grace. And so that was a lot of the application that I was hearing it, but it's stand on the principle, understand these principles that are important and that you won't compromise or sacrifice, and stand on those. That's what jumps out at me with this one.
It's good. I agree. I think that if you're only looking at the rules and don't understand the principles behind them, you don't understand the machinery behind the rule, then you end up with the form without the function. So you look like you're doing something, but you have no connection to the reason why.
Yeah. Which is not sustainable, really.
No, I would say that it's actually immature. Like, a lot of kids will do the thing because they think it's the right thing to do because they've seen other people do it, but have no understanding of why they do it. So, for instance, I love my nephews. They're fantastic. And they're like 8 and... No, they're 10 and 12. And they're avid golfers. They live on a golf course. They golf all the time. They play in the youth... I think it's like a youth golf association of some sort.
Okay.
Can't remember the name. What's interesting, though, is when they were really small, when they were 6, 7 years old, they would watch PGA Tour coverage, and then they would go out on the golf course, and they were playing 9 and 18 holes at like 7, 8 years old.
All right.
Like, not from the blacks,
right.
But, I mean, they were playing, you know, full holes.
Right.
Well, then we get on the green, and they go through all the motions of, like, reading the green, like, all the things that look like they're doing the right thing, because they would watch the PGA Tour guys do it. So they would mark their ball and pick it up, and they would mess with it, and they would set it down, and then they would get behind the ball, and they would squat down, they'd do the putter thing, and then they would stand up, and then they would address the ball. But no understanding of what all those things were supposed to accomplish. They just knew if they did the right things, then they would look like a PGA golfer, and that was enough.
They were modeling the behavior that they saw without really understanding why that behavior was taking place.
Which is appropriate when you're a kid. That's exactly what we want our kids to do. We're modeling, like, we want our kids to model their behavior after what we're doing. But we have to be doing what we do because of principles, because of the reasons behind it. Yeah. Otherwise, we're just doing the same thing our kids are doing, mimicking a model.
Yep.
We want the real thing.
That's a great example. I mean, I can totally see those kids squatting down, holding the putter, or holding the putter vertical, or laying it horizontal on the green. I mean, I do that sometimes today, and I'm not sure why I'm doing that. You know, but it's a great example.
And they've become great golfers. My 10-year-old just shot, my 10-year-old nephew just shot a 42 on 9.
Wow.
So
he's doing something right.
He eagled a par 5.
Good for him.
I was like, what? He's 10. That's crazy. So, like, it's good to model for a little while, but you have to understand, like, what you're doing later on.
So that's part of the whole raising up process. You know, give them examples to follow, but then help them understand why it matters. Give them a bigger vision. Give her a bigger purpose for these behaviors that you're learning. Yeah. All right. Well, let's. I mean, we could go on and on.
There's 32 of them. We can bounce back and forth for a while.
We've allocated an episode, and that's probably enough. So, listeners, if you're curious, you can head out to our podcast page to see the full list. And I'm curious of what you heard from us. What's your reactions? Or if you look at the whole list, what are some that jump out to you? And if you got something, you can hit us at feedback@thenextmanup.com, or on Facebook. We're at NMU Journey there. And once again, if you're interested in jumping in on the Forging Men course that is just launching, you can get all the information at thenextmanup.com/forgingmen. We'd love to have you join us. All right, Josh, thanks once again.
Always good to be here.
Good conversation, listeners. As always, appreciate you being with us and for yet another episode. And so, as we always do, we'll land the plane here. Until next time,
Adios.
Hey, listeners, thanks for journeying with us on this Next Man Up podcast. You know, we would love to hear from you. Maybe you have a question or an idea, perhaps a topic for us to consider. If that's you and you want to reach out to us, you can get us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. That's feedback@thenextmanup.com. Again, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we'll see you later.